Hey everyone, welcome back to Asturis City in City Skylines. We built the new important junction for the public transport system last time. It was built at the base of the tall ridge where I would like to continue today, as promised. So today we go up the slopes. We will take one of the tram lines with us. We will build twisty networks, buildings inside the cliffs, do some natural details, and also fill some empty blocks down near the coastline. Let's go. I already had this project in mind for some time, so I was pretty sure what kind of buildings I want to put here, what kind of styles to follow, and just overall how the area was supposed to look. So unlike the other projects that I did previously, the start of this one was pretty smooth because, well, like I said, I already knew what I wanted to do up here. And I also already had all the buildings figured out because I'm using the Noted mod right now, and I was just making all these little notes like what kind of buildings I would like to put here as I've just, searched those buildings or found those buildings randomly when doing some previous projects. So up here we are only going to use three kinds of buildings. Now the smallest one in here, as you can see that I kind of just randomly put it on the slopes, those are called the Wolfgang residence buildings, and I already switched them into procedural objects and put them side by side like this so that they have windows on each side except the back side, but the back side is going to be inside the cliffs, right, in the slopes. So that's going to be absolutely perfect. The second buildings that I'm going to be heavily using, those are the roundabout buildings, right, made by Luminu if I'm not mistaken. And the third building that I didn't show here yet, those are going to be the Grange Park from New Zealand. So they are going to form these like nice terraced or like stair-like patterns on the slopes. So that's going to be really nice. Now, first things first, we have to do the networks because those are going to allow me to see where am I going to be able to put these buildings. I obviously need to observe some kind of reasonable grades because we are stretching this tram line over here. With the road, it's not really that super critical, but the tram lines, the tram tracks, I obviously must not make it into like a completely unrealistic roller coaster. So I was using the network multi-tool in there, as you could have seen, and I was just making sure that there is some sort of a half loop at the start coming from that plaza from last time, because we really ascend quite a great distance, vertical distance, and then it just continues along the slopes into some kind of an area that I'm not really going to bother with in today's project. Now, along the tram tracks, we are going to build that road. I decided to use this red brick road from the workshop because it kind of tells you that it's supposed to be like a very low capacity, like a suburban road. That's not really intended for like a through traffic through this area. And by the way, this road is not even going to be built through the entire place. It's going to be basically a complete dead end. So the major option for transportation, or the main transportation option, is going to be the tram. Now, anyway, these kinds of buildings. So at first, I'm going to do something with these roundabout buildings because I'm just kind of experimenting in here. I was doing this on the live stream. I was not super sure how I'm going to place these buildings exactly where. Obviously, it was all dictated by the shape of the networks. And in here, I managed to kind of accidentally create like a perfect curve where one of those roundabout buildings exactly fit in like an opposite direction so that the curve is like facing the ridge. And then I just decided to continue a very similar shape as I did with the main train station, with the main hub, and make a couple of these buildings facing outwards from the ridge and actually being very elevated above the slopes, going really far away from the cliffs, right? So unfortunately, this part of the project I'm not going to finish in today's project, in today's video, because that would just extend the place, the entire footprint, very far away from the area that I kind of, wanted to build today. So we are just going to prepare the networks, prepare the building, but don't really finish the underside of the building. Later, I would like to have this building stand on some kind of pillars, make it look very like slim or something like that. I don't really want to do anything like super massive. And also partially why I don't want to finish this building is because it's directly facing those railways coming across the river, which is going to be the next project. That's going to be the very long bridge that I'm going to do in the next episode, right? So this area I want to keep for that next episode. But at least we are going to do the building on the top. So, we will have something to look at least, right? But anyway, the bulk of this project is going to be probably concentrated on this part, facing that smaller transportation hub from last time. So this is also the place where I'm placing these roundabout buildings inside the cliffs, in this case fully, so that the back of the buildings are just completely going to be inside the cliffs, and on top of them I'm going to place those Wolfgang residence buildings on the slopes. Now, the mountain ridge, I had to really extensively change it, right? The shape, because it needed to just match the buildings and all the networks and everything. But I kind of already, or not already, but also wanted to somewhat preserve some of its features. Like, for example, the peak of the ridge, it was just aiming into this region, this area. So that's why I'm going to create these tunnels for those networks. It was kind of a headache because the red brick road, doesn't have a tunnel. So I had to use for one of those like replacements for network extensions, I believe, roads, because they have rendered tunnels. And it's like a bus road, so it's already red. So, it kind of looks similar. And most importantly, it's the exact same width as the road, because the rest of the tunnels in the game are very wide. Now, unfortunately, it has that like bunker-like concrete, very heavy entrance, so I'm probably going to create something similar looking, but at least I'm going to unify it between those two tunnel entrances, and later I'm just going to put all kinds of prop rocks around it and all kinds of vegetation, so, it's not going to look that massive. This is the road that's just going to twist up above these roundabout buildings into kind of like the peak of the ridge, and that's where I'm going to put those Wolfgang residence buildings, just the 3 of them. I kind of planned at first to just create maybe like 2 or 3 levels with these roads and just create like an outline all around the ridge with certain buildings, but it kind of felt a bit too heavy. And I finally decided that we're just not really going to overdo it too much with the density up here. I think I mentioned it in the last episode that I would like to do some kind of like a very dominant looking building overlooking that transportation area plaza from last time. But I decided against it. I really wanted to keep this place a bit lower density, even though it's not really, because these buildings are huge. There's going to be a lot of people living in these buildings, right? I'm going to make sure that it is going to be working. Now, obviously, all of these buildings need to be procedural objects for obvious reasons, because standard buildings in the game would flatten the terrain, and I cannot afford that in this place. I really want to have these buildings work together with the terrain, and especially these, I really want to have them just inside the cliffs like that. So they have to be procedural objects, otherwise this would not work at all. But we are later going to make it functional, because we are going to put inside of them the block houses, right? So there are going to be lots of people living in here. Now, this is the third building that I was talking about. This is the Grange Park building from New Zealand. It's made by Alitar GZ in the workshop. And they are nice. They are exactly what I was looking for, because they have this like a terrace in front of them, and they are just reasonably. I'm not really sure what to say. What's the word? But what I'm trying to say is that you can just place a lot of them next to each other, and they are going to look okay, right? They are not that unique looking. Yeah, that's probably what I'm trying to say. So I can create these terraces, and again, I have to turn them into PO because I'm placing them inside these slopes. I'm using, I think, four columns of these buildings right here. We have that curved road in here. Maybe it would have been better if these buildings were like side by side with the same orientation, because the detailing between them would have been a tiny bit easier, but this is going to work. I was inspired by real-life structures for this one from Switzerland, where there are also these kinds of similar-looking structures built on the slopes here and there. So, overall, the aesthetics of these places is looking really nice in real life as well. I really wanted to experiment with that in the game as well. So making these terraces longer, I kind of want to not do that extensive terrain changes to these slopes. So I'm just making sure that these buildings are going to fit the slopes and not the other way around. I am going to do some like landscaping to just fine tune it, polish it, but I'm just trying to make the buildings fit as much as I can. So we obviously have to provide some kind of entrances to the upper parts of this column of buildings. So we are going to create these stairs exactly how it is in real life with these kinds of terraced structures. Now, these kinds of buildings, they are absolutely perfect for conversion into procedural objects because they are really not that complicated. You can just change, for example, this building, as you downloaded from the workshop, is basically 4 houses right next to each other, and they have all separate entrances through the terrace, right? But you can easily just get rid of that with procedural objects, and I decided to only keep an entrance for the bottom floor only on one side, and the rest of the houses are going to be entered through the sides through these stairs. I mean, that's just the decoration. Obviously, it's not going to work like that in the game. In the game, I'm just going to put some of those block residential buildings inside the first floor, and that's going to be it. So overall, this was a very easy thing to do because I didn't need to construct this place through the use of some individual elements like retaining walls and all that. So I just used some changes with that actual building and covered it with pulpable grass to kind of unify it with the textures all around, and that was done. And yeah, the stairs, and those are all the objects that I needed to use. So overall, quite satisfying mini project of this overall build. Now, what are we going to do with this open area as we are ascending into the slopes? So like I said, in the previous episode, I kind of wanted to have some sort of a dominant building up here overlooking the high density parts below it. But it was just a bit too weird place for that. I didn't want to overshadow the slopes. I really want those slopes to be visible from the bottom, from the surfaces basically, down here from the base of those ridges. And at the same time, I don't really want to overdo it with the density, like I said. So I just decided that we are going to have a park there. There's already the tram, the tram line just twisting up, and we're just going to provide some pedestrian connections from the terminal in here, and we are also later going to connect it to that boardwalk from 2 episodes back, right? So I'm going to show you that as well. So overall, this place is just going to serve as some kind of pedestrian connection junction, you might think of it, and a park because, why not? I was thinking that we are going to provide some kind of like hiking options for the ridges, but the ridges are a bit too steep for that, and there are not that many suitable options, suitable places for that. So we are just going to create more pedestrian connections like this, and it's going to be looking absolutely fine. There's going to be that clear divider between the high density downtowny part of the city and these kinds of like low density slopes, at least like seemingly low density, like I explained before. By the way, this what I'm doing in there, that was just me painting that, I believe, ore texture or oil texture, I'm not really sure, that I changed into this like a muddy color that I would really like to just decorate the tops, the peaks of the ridges with. And since I changed the ridges positions, I had to, redo that. And it's just, some kind of another additional detail that you can place on these like natural things that you are doing in your game. So I would really like to continue with that, with these kinds of changes as well. Now, anyway, we also must start doing some of the details. I'm not really going to overdo it in this part because we are not even creating like that big open spaces, open surfaces. So I don't need to just do all kinds of crazy stuff with these. I don't need to add any like tiles or something like that. I don't think I could, or even could, because these places are not super flat. So, some kind of benches, planters are going to be absolutely enough. So this is, for example, creating that entrance into the tunnel. As you can see, these 2 tunnel entrances look nothing like nothing alike. That's the expression. So I need to unify it a bit and really hide it because I'm inevitably creating a very large concrete structure in here. I don't particularly like that. At first, I was thinking that I'm just going to build like a custom network for this purpose. using the road editor, but it would have just been a bit too much of a headache, really, and for a single tunnel. So I'm just going to go for this, and we're just going to decorate it with some rocks, as you can see. And since we are going to decorate it around the tunnel entrances, it's just a great opportunity to use these rocks also around the ridge, and they are going to look really good, especially around the buildings, because they are going to allow me to hide some inconsistencies. Obviously, I did not make these buildings so that they would exactly fit the slopes, right? The places where they are built. So I have to just make do with what I have. So these kinds of details, like the rocks, like the landscaping, and later some vegetation, it's going to be absolutely perfect for like finishing touches around these buildings. So for example, around these roundabout buildings, on the edges of them, I'm just going to create these rocks and make it look like this place must have been, of course, like carved before they constructed the structures, and maybe some of these rocks were just left bare like that. So that's kind of common in real life as well. If you have strong enough rocks, strong enough cliffs, you don't really need to do any kind of retaining walls, any kind of measures against rockfall or anything. You can just leave them bare like that. So, that's looking absolutely great. And in City Skylines in particular, with these kinds of projects, it's absolutely, great technique to hide these edges that you cannot really control with the shapes of the buildings, unless you really want to go ham with procedural objects, but ain't nobody got time for that. So this is the functionality that I was talking about. I was just using those block service buildings for the residential, high density residential, and just placing them inside the buildings. What's really great about City Skylines is that these kinds of block services, or well, actually any kind of building, does not require a direct road access. If you want to only have pedestrians use those buildings, and I kind of do, for gameplay purposes, that's absolutely fine with me. So they don't require road access, and you can place pedestrian paths, invisible pedestrian paths in my case, and pedestrians are actually going to be using them. So I created that little like a front porch, I suppose, with the pavement in front of that roundabout building, and I placed that invisible pedestrian path, and people are using that, and that's absolutely great, right? They are not like going to the nearest point of like a network road or something like that. They are actually using those pedestrian paths. So that's absolutely amazing, and that's what basically allows the construction of these highly customized building blocks. So that's really great. And I think I'm going to be showing that in the cinematics, how these places are really crowded already with people, and they are using all this infrastructure that I prepared for them. And that is just the most satisfying thing to see in City Skylines, of course. Now, we are returning back to this largest building of the area. Like I said, we are only going to do the top right now. We are not really going to focus that much on the bottom, and I'm not even going to focus much on this tram station. This tram station is a tiny bit weird, but in the end it probably turned out looking okay because it's mostly hidden underneath that building. It's very important there because the building obviously is huge. It's going to have lots of inhabitants. By the way, I did not mention it, but all of these buildings, I'm considering them to be residential. They kind of look like hotels or something, but I would really like to consider them as residential buildings. So they are huge, as you can see. There are lots of people living in them, and even gameplay wise, as you could have seen, I placed lots of those cube buildings in the doors of the first floors. So and you can even see that in these time-lapse shots because I let the game play for a while, so you can see all the people just using the sidewalks and lots of cars of people moving in. So this place really got very, very busy. I think Asturis is nearing some 28k population or something, so that's nice to see as well. Using lots of the grass on the tops of these buildings as well. So this I already mentioned. These are the Grange Park buildings, but I'm also using it in between those roundabout buildings because this roundabout building, or those roundabout buildings that I'm using, they are made of two, and there's like a gap between them. So I'm using that to form some kind of like an inner park between the buildings and making it look like the building is not really that deep, right? Especially the part that's basically just hidden inside the cliffs. So doing also some kind of details in those parks, these kinds of like umbrellas and chairs and benches and just, some kind of details for these kinds of chill places. Now, by the way, that tram station that I did down below those that bigger building, that's going to be also very important because it's going to be the only connection up into this area from that other direction that we are going to continue building in the next episode, because I'm not really sure if I'm going to provide a road access. The hill there is a bit too steep for that, and maybe I could provide like an elevator or something. But like I said, I would really like to have that building just rest on some kind of like slim pillars, and it would just not look exactly right if I just cluttered that with some kind of roads or like access places or anything like that. So the trams are going to be very important in this place. Now we are mostly done with the rough, building placement and some of the rougher details up top. So we are now going to move and finish this thing. This is the boardwalk that is originating from that like a residential tower place from 3 episodes back, I believe. And I said that I would really like to stretch it all the way to this wall of the railways and somehow make it connected to the pedestrian access onto the ridges, onto the hills. So at first I thought I'm just going to build like an elevator on the outside, but I'm probably just going to consider it as hidden inside the cliffs, right? There's definitely going to be like some kind of elevator if this was real life. And I just, already had it aiming directly below this lower part of the railway in a very like comfortable, clearance. So I just made it just fit through one of these entrances between the pillars, and also created a tunnel entrance from the surface. So there's like it forms like an important, very convenient junction for the pedestrians if they want to just, travel across the entire area. Now, by the way, the video is already getting a bit longer, so I'm just going to focus on finishing touches of these like supports and cliffs on the side of the hill here, and we are going to touch this more in the next episode because we are going to finally finish this train wall. But all the rest of the filling of blocks down below here on the surfaces, I'm just going to skip that, and we are only going to see that in the cinematics. There's really not much to look at, honestly. I just filled those blocks with some random fillers, kind of like I did back in the day in Aurelia, because I had absolutely zero plans for anything super unique there, and we kind of should do some of that, density in the city anyway. So this is the before and after comparison. And as you can see, those places down below, they really filled nicely, and we have that contrast. I really like how the railway forms that edge of the high density places down below and the more chill, natural areas at the top, right? And with all of these buildings just blending in with the cliffs, with their surroundings. So that's really nice to see. And you probably don't see it, especially if you are watching on mobile, but there are huge crowds of people just using the trams, using the public transport. I made these shots just a couple of minutes after I finished these places, so that's why we have lots of these cars moving here, because those are just the people that, or those are just the cars that originated at the map entrances, and these people are just moving in. But after that, after they moved in, the entire traffic situation really calmed down. There's basically no cars at this point because people are just using the trams. Right now, the road connection into the rest of the city is just temporary because, we haven't built there just yet. So it might be a bit inconvenient for the vehicles right now, but I would like to keep it that way. I really don't want to provide like a short road path into the rest of the city. I do want to force people to use the trams here because those are really, really convenient. People can easily just take this tram, go one stop into that hub, take the train, and go anywhere else in the city. So overall, very, very convenient. Now, I also created a parking option for people. It's just a decoration, of course, but there is that entrance into the top building here, and on that larger building there on the right, I just made this road go into the cliff, into like a tunnel entrance, and I'm thinking that that's probably some kind of underground parking as well. These are the terraced houses, or, well, they're probably not called that, but these like stair patterns with these buildings. I really like that. I intentionally did not put grass on the top buildings right there because I really want them to be a bit more visible, because otherwise the grass just blends in with the rest of the terrain a bit too much. So I really do want these shapes to be visible. That's exactly why I didn't put grass on these roundabout buildings, on the tops of them, but only in those recessed areas in the centers. Really satisfied with the details on the gardens in here, and just overall the feel of this place. It turned out looking okay, I suppose. So anyway, that's going to be all for today's episode, guys. Next episode of Asturis will take us further up this valley of the second river, and we are going to build the structure of that bridge. We are going to build a super custom bridge again. I'm really looking forward to that. I already kind of test fitted some of the elements there, and let me tell you, it's going to look really, really interesting. So can't wait to start building it. Anyway, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to do all the things to help the video, to help the channel, help the video reach more people. That is putting the thumbs up below the video, sharing it, subscribing to the channel if you're new here, leaving a comment. And if you like this a lot, you can become a channel member to directly support it. Big thanks to all the channel members. I really, really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Goodbye.